Good evening and welcome along to the Shortgrass Kildare Nationalist Sports Podcast, where time goes around very quickly indeed. It doesn't seem that long ago that we were looking at the fixtures being announced for the National League season, and it felt a long time ago, but all of a sudden, here we are on the eve of a new Allianz National Football League season, and joining myself, Ger McNally, to look ahead to that and many other different things. Of course, the Ladies Football League also starting. The Hurlers have a bye this weekend, but we'll be looking back on their Walsh Shield final against Kilkenny last week. So joining me to look at all that and more is Tommy O'Connell and Seamus Dillon here. Good evening, lads. So we to the Allianz National Football League and that daunting trip that I don't think anybody of the Kildare persuasion has been looking forward to too much against Tyrone in the opening round of the league. But before we look ahead to next weekend's action, we will look back to the O'Byrne Cup final. Pre-season got finished up against Westmeath in Cedral St. Conleth's Park. It was a game that for large spells looked as if it was going pretty well for Kildare, and certainly midway through the second half it looked like we were going to get a piece of silverware lifted by Kevin Feely on the steps of Cedral St. Conleth's Park. I think everybody was pretty happy, but the final quarter of that game left a sour taste in the taste of the Kildare supporters' mouth, I would say, and plenty of disgruntled faces trudging their way out of the ground there in Newbridge. Tommy, it was an up and down performance, but obviously finished on a low, and I suppose particularly alarming how much time and space Ronan Wallace and Luke Loughlin were allowed to inspire that Westmeath comeback, and it was no surprise that it was those two that kicked the last 2 pointers that got the Lake County over the line.
Yeah, I think it was one thing throughout the game when you're looking at the scoreboard and you're thinking if there was anything within like 6 points of that, you know that. Now I didn't see Wallace's performance coming, to be honest. But you know what Luke Loughlin is capable of. I mean, he's one of the best long-range shooters in the country. We could see that in the league last year. I mean, the huge scores that Westmeath put up last year and still got relegated. And I think people in Kildare spoke of it at length that the danger they possess coming into that Leinster Championship match, which we impressively got over the line against them because we took it out. But we saw the quality of Loughlin all throughout the year. But once they were starting to get within 4 or 5, you're thinking, geez, like it just takes a couple of, and there was a couple of actually times I thought Loughlin had scored, Loughlin had scored because it was Wallace with being so far away up in the terrace with the red hair, and it was happening on the other side. I thought he scored about 110 or 12 by the end. But it was there were a lot of good things in that game from Kildare. At times, times they turned the ball over very well. They gave Westmeath nothing in the opening quarter. I think a lot of the Kildare scores, or a lot of the Kildare's play in the first half was overshadowed a bit by the fact that they scored those 3 back-to-back 2-pointers. Because then I was looking at the scoreboard and I think we hadn't scored a 1-pointer, I think, for a long, long time, and that was a little bit worrying because we had hit so many wides in the first half. Jeez, the amount of pot shots that shouldn't have been taken on. A couple of shots where lads are coming onto it on the run, and the angle isn't there because of the angle they're running at, the pace they're going at, and poor wides, poor shot selection, and we still hadn't scored the 1-pointer. And people around me were like, God, we're finally learning how to kick 2-pointers, and 2-pointers were brilliant. Don't get me wrong, they were really, really good. But it was just you're just had that little worry in your head. But we went in ahead. I was fairly confident even getting into the second half. I thought at times Kildare were defending quite well, but then, as you said, Ger, just near the end, and everybody could see it happening. You could just see it coming, and the screams of "Get out to him! Get out to him! Get out to him!" Because prior to goal, Westmeath didn't have too much interest in working the ball in, trying to get in behind the Kildare defence. Now, is that because of the way Kildare were set up? Because at first they were set up kind of sitting back slightly around that D, so the option to popping the ball wasn't in. So maybe it was a case of Westmeath's only option was to take those pot shots on from distance. But yeah, you're just looking at, right in front of me there at one stage, you're looking at Luke Loughlin and you just know it's going to be a jink right onto his left. And he doesn't need a big wind up or anything. He just needs to drop the ball onto his boot, and he'll have the shot at it. It's listen, it was very disappointing that from that point of view. It was I feel like it was an important game, because it was that last look of probably the squad that we have going into this Tyrone game. There was a big crowd there, would have done good for morale. I was very, very disappointed and frustrated leaving the stadium. But at the same time, once I cooled down in O'Rourke's after about 25 minutes, I was trying to think back at the good things, and some players around the field, impressive enough performances, and they did showed a good bit of intensity at times as well. And there was some good quick passages of play that opened up Westmeath a lot. This would have been Westmeath's strongest team, bar maybe one or two. Like, you're looking at, this is the Westmeath team that's going to be going into the league. They had a lot of big hitters there, and we know we're going to talk later on about the injuries that we have. Somebody else said during the week in the media, maybe this is the right time for us to figure out those leaks that come from the half-back line, or the possibility of just defending slightly higher up. But there's people are looking at the negatives from the game. The Burn Cup is there; it's done and dusted. We have this weekend now. It's the same, more likely the same crop of players. Hopefully, with 2 or 3 more coming in. But as you said, Gerard, the freedom of St. Conleth's Park is the one thing that stuck in people's minds at the end for those last 10 minutes. So disappointing, but hopefully it'll be forgotten about in a few weeks' time.
It will certainly be forgotten if we get a win on Saturday evening up in Omagh against Tyrone. But Seamus, I suppose, like, on one hand, people will say it is only the O'Byrne Cup and the results doesn't really matter a huge amount. But at the same time, players who are playing at this elite level have that competitive edge. They'd be disgusted if they let a lead slip like that in a training game or a challenge game. Never mind in the game, those being televised live to the nation and in front of a couple of thousand supporters there as well. And in fairness, Seamus, you spoke to a couple of the players. There was a big element of frustration, and with Brian Flanagan as well, at seeing that lead slip. And I suppose it's those crucial moments late in a game, because going into Division 2, you would imagine that a lot of these games are going to go down to the last 5 minutes of the game, and what has gone before in the 65 minutes before, it might not matter a whole lot, and it could come down to the final kick of the ball in a lot of these games. And it's about keeping those cool heads and making the right decision. And I suppose we saw the space that was afforded to the real sharpshooter. Okay, Ronan Wallace had a fantastic game, but it was either Wallace or Loughlin that Westmeath were trying to get that last ball to, and still Loughlin was able to get a relatively unopposed shot away. But if you think back a little bit before that as well, I suppose Kildare had a promising attack maybe to get a winning score themselves, but the pass was given away, it was intercepted, and that led to the counter-attack that gave Westmeath the last possession and ultimately led to that score. And I suppose it's about making the right decisions in those key moments, especially if the game is finally balanced like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was glad Tommy said 25 minutes when he cooled off. It wasn't 25 points in O'Rourke, so something to build on. But yeah, look, it's hugely frustrating, Jaron. As I sat in beside you there, you could see that coming down the tracks for the closing 5 to 7 minutes, and I feel maybe there's a little element of casualness, for the want of a better word, and whether that's the word. Like, before halftime, we sort of eased off after we had got a little bit ahead. We got 8 points ahead in midway through that second half, as you say, and it was game over. And that aspect of Kildare performances, where we're not just putting teams to bed, sitting back and inviting them on to us and conceding scores. We were a little bit like that against Limerick in the Tailteann Cup final last year. Thankfully, the clock ran out. They had a goal-scoring opportunity at the end, and we got over the line. And that's just a worrying thing, that bit of calmness and that bit of, somebody to put their hand on the ball and slow the game down and put together a few passes. And maybe that comes with a lot of inexperience that's in the panel as well, where you just don't have somebody that's, maybe able to do that. But yeah, from that point of view, it's very, very frustrating. I mean, there was expletives that maybe you or I could have got rid of in the closing 4 or 5 minutes. But from a player point of view, from a management point of view, from spectator point of view, it was crying out for somebody to step in, to pick up somebody. We thought maybe when Liam Kelly came on that he was going to become that extra defender, and in fairness to him, he did well up in that half-forward line. But yeah, just little things that I'd say the video analysis had to have been good on Tuesday night or Monday, or maybe when they were away at the weekend, to have a look at that, to see where there was problems, to where they can eradicate them, and maybe just going into next weekend, because it's a massive game. But there was really good aspects of the Kildare performance. I mean, We got some very good scores. We worked the ball very well. There was some good tackling. Like we did push up on Westmeath at times, and that's encouraging. Just from the point of view of not seeing out games to the very end, where we invite the opposition on and give them scoring opportunities, and they certainly took them. That's the worry you'd have. But I think you can look at it. The O'Byrne Cup is gone. It's lost. It's disappointing. It would have been lovely on Friday evening to get a bit of silverware, as you say. But in saying that, there's a chance to reset. There's, before you go to Oma, and the players will know that themselves. The management know that themselves. So from that point of view, it's not doom and gloom and the end of the world. I think Kildare will build on that and they'll learn from it. And I suppose from a Westmeath point of view, they were hugely impressive, and that was without maybe Ray Cannellan putting anything towards the performance. He probably had a quite enough evening by his standards, and we saw what he brought to it last year. But they're going to be a strong team in Division 3. But I wouldn't be worried. And as Tommy said, there's so many injuries out there at the moment that, if Kildare were picking from a full panel, you'd have a lot more confidence going to home. And that's no disrespect to the inexperiences there. So not all doom and gloom. Saw somebody doing tables this afternoon for predictions and giving Kildare a chance of getting 3, possibly 4 wins in the league. And I think that's well within their capabilities.
We look forward more to the game against Tyrone and indeed the National League shortly. But Tommy, our good colleague and our good friend and colleague Richard Commons, he came up with an incredible stat that Brian Flanagan, in little over a year's time, and we're only talking about one full season and an O'Byrne Cup campaign, has given an incredible 27 players their first taste of senior championship football. That's an incredible turnover in such a short space of time. And I suppose on one hand, it's probably not ideal this season what's happened with the amount of injuries, and maybe in an ideal world that number of players maybe wouldn't have got the opportunity that they have. But now that they have, and I suppose have done well, we've got to an O'Byrne Cup final, albeit losing with the last kick of the game and be behind for only, I think, 2 or 3 seconds with the ball in play against Westmeath. So it's gone relatively well through the O'Byrne Cup, and a lot of those players have, got a nice little bit of game time under their belt, and albeit a really tough prospect in the opening round of the league, the benefit there for Kildare could be in the long run.
Yeah, and if that's the amount of players that he's given game time to, imagine how many players he's looked at. How many other players have been at trials or have been invited into development panels and development squads. Yeah. I mean, you can't say he hasn't cast the net wide. I'd say and take that, not only the trial matches and development, but also Flano going to the matches, because we know he went to a lot of club championship matches. And imagine the amount of players he's seen between himself and Aidan and Damien, and Davey coming in as well. God, the amount of players that must be passing through spreadsheets in there must be unbelievable. But to give them a go and to trust a lot of lads. I mean, I think the best thing about that O'Byrne Cup this year was, and I'm talking all the way to the last iteration of the O'Byrne Cup, which was 2 years ago. This is, I'd say, the first year in about 10 years where the O'Byrne Cup has had good crowds at. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the last 2 games because we had them at home and we had Dublin, and then the next one was a final. But for years, we've all gone to Kildare matches in the O'Byrne Cup, be it in Wexford, in Newbridge. I've been at O'Byrne Cup matches in Newbridge on a Saturday afternoon where there wouldn't be 200 people at, and the interest was never there. This isn't going back too long now, lads. But there'd be players there, and you'd be watching 10 minutes of a lad from a club that you'd probably never see again, but it was good to see him in a white jersey. And it was almost like, sure, we'll give him a chance in the O'Byrne Cup, or we'll give him 15 minutes, never be heard of again. But that old way of thinking is gone now. These players don't get their moment in the O'Byrne Cup and then they're forgotten about. Now they're either dropping back to a development panel, they're part of a long-term plan. There's probably 2 or 3 rotating squads there in the background. Obviously there's going to be the main squad going forward. But it's just a really good structure in the county at the moment. That a lot of these players, it's not just a case of come in training with us for a couple of weeks, you'll get your Kildare jersey, you'll get your bag and your tracksuit, you'll go down to Wexford or you'll go to Carlow or wherever. There's genuine progression, and it's like in any walk of life now. If you see a progression, you see a pathway forward, you have to see out your next 2 years. And that's there for, it must be like maybe 40, 50 players already have that in their minds that they know they're involved in some way. I just think it's brilliant. Just getting back to that Auburn Cup final quickly, George, just I probably should have said to you before we came on air, but you know the way we put out that form for questions. So we got a lot of feedback. So I just said I'd pick out one. So just while we're on the topic, I will read out something from Des, because he obviously put a bit of effort into writing it. So I'm just going to read it out quickly. So this is the first of the viewers' opinions from Des that sent it in earlier. So he said, one concern I have from the Auburn Cup final is the continuance of a pattern from last year of an inability to close out games, as we mentioned. We got away with it against Sligo, Offaly and Limerick in the Tailteann Cup, but I worry if it's not addressed, we will be severely punished for it this year. I believe we have a high calibre coaching team and hope to see evidence of better game management starting on Saturday night in Omagh. The Offaly game is a 4-pointer and we need all our ducks in a row for that. So, in fairness to Des, like I know he kind of mentioned a good few points that we already mentioned here in the last 10 minutes, and that Seamus brought up as well. So that's his input on that anyway so far. So thanks very much, Des.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to get a comment like that. But yeah, I would say that's probably a bit of a long-standing problem for Kildare. I remember looking through stats and stuff, particularly during Cian O'Neill's time, and particularly during that Division 1 campaign in 2018, when I think we lost a number of games by just 1 or 2 points that time, and there was probably an issue with Kildare closing out the game. But I think over the last the last year or so, since Brian has come in, like thinking some of those games, we just seem to hit a bit of a flat spot, and it's kind of even games that we maybe look to be in control of. Thinking back to Offaly and Clare in the league last year, we just had a bit of a flat spot, maybe is the best way to describe it, and games that we were maybe in control of, that suddenly a couple of minutes here and there, and even switching off against Louth in the Leinster Championship as well, and conceding a goal on the stroke of half time as well. So yeah, I suppose it's something of experience as well, and the knowledge and know-how maybe to see those moments out and the key moments in the game, and then, as I mentioned earlier as well, it's making those key decisions late in a game, particularly when it's finally balanced. And it was a great atmosphere there in Cedar St. Collins Park there for the last couple of minutes of the match. I mean, once Westmeath got back level, or even just before that score, once they got a bit of a smell of a result there, the crowd really got involved. And that last play when Kildare had an opportunity, and I think Brian McLaughlin certainly was fouled. I mean, there's no point in crying over spilled milk now or sour grapes, but I think Brian McLaughlin was certainly fouled late in the game there that maybe would have given Kildare a lead score. But it was that the final play that Kildare had the ball, was that Alex Byrne was looking for McLaughlin, and the pass was intercepted. But yeah, it was a great atmosphere, and it really kind of had a bit of an edge to it as well. And I mean, there are moments that you'd hope the players will learn from, and come the really crucial league games, so to be able to take something from it.
Feely was fouled as well underneath me at the very end. And it was right in front of me, and it was 4 yards away from the linesman. He went up and he caught the ball, and as he caught the ball, his arm got pulled straight down with him to the ground. It's the most blatant free, and the referee just stood there with his mouth open. He stopped because he knew something happened, and the crowd would go mad. He was looking at it, and he just stopped and looked around, and everybody was shouting at him, and he just continued on. So yeah, and I was conscious of saying this on Saturday night, but giving out with the ref, but there were a few decisions at the end, and it was almost like, Asher, we'll see how it plays out. I'd hate to end the game on a free. Now, I know that's a harsh thing to say, and I know I'm putting words in people's mouth, but it was a bit like that. We won't end the game on a free. We'll see what to do. If they wanted a grandstand finish, in fairness, they got it. It was great for the people watching on the TV and on neutrals and stuff. Ger, I'm going to do one more as well, because I'm going to give this one to Seamus. I'm sorry, Ger, I am hitting you with these. It's just I forgot to mention it, and people have got to the effort of sending them in. Ger, Seamus, it's a really quick one here as well, and in fairness, it asks the question where we think Kildare's weaknesses are. I don't think that's a fair one to put on you without any backup, but I'm just going to read out the comment anyway, because it's from the person didn't leave their name, which I did say to people, if they didn't want to, they don't have to, which is absolutely fair enough. So say, lads, firstly, great podcast. Thanks very much. Great knowledge and opinions on all things Kildare GA from all the lads. My question will be where you think our main areas of concern are this year and where we will impress. I'm worried, having watched another half-back win a game against us last week. He's probably talking there, obviously, what happened last week, but also we could see the way Egan destroyed us there for Offaly as well last year and a couple of other times. So another half-back win against us last week, and that we're too slow to recognise where the threats are coming from, not only on the sideline, but players not seeing it for themselves, which has been an issue for a while. So do take that one, Seamus.
Yeah, weaknesses. Look, you don't like to pinpoint or give an opinion because I firmly of the belief that, you know, the 15 lads that take the field or the 6 or 7 lads that come in, they're there with a job to do to the best of their ability. And we have the best supporters in the world, and that was it was highly evident last Friday evening. You know, the atmosphere that was there and the whole lot. A couple of things that, from my own observation, watching the game. And there were a couple of things. One was at centre half back, and we might have mentioned it or spoke about it in the past, is that, and I suppose it was evident when Whittaker was on the ball, that his ability to dance inside the arc and create chances, and there were a couple of goal chances in that first half. I suppose, look, it's very easy to go back to the Glenn Ryans or the Kieran McGeeneys or the strong centre half backs that you would have seen down the years, that, you know, they sit in that pocket, and, you know, if somebody comes once, they're not going to come the second time, and that's just something that maybe, you know, over the next couple of weeks and before you head to a championship, that you can settle in on something like that. My second, suppose, bugbear was the amount of Kildare defensive players who attack, and that, to my feeling is that, okay, it's good, and you're spraying balls back and forth across the field, and you're trying to, you know, create a chance, and there's someone coming at an angle, and you get a score, and we kick some very good ones. And I suppose Ryan Sinky and Dara Kerwin are two guys out injured at the minute, but they're brilliant at coming in off those runs, and we saw it with Ben Lokeman as well at the weekend. But sometimes that curtails some of your danger men, and that was probably what I saw with Owen Cully on Friday evening, that, you know, he was so limited. Maybe did he get on the ball 4 or 5 times? He had to get out in front of Saki, the cornerback, with a ball that just bounced out of his arms. But and I was watching him, because I do watch forwards, because you've played as a forward. But, you know, he was making runs, he was going left, he was going right, but then the ball turns, and it's frustrating. But they're only little small things. But I think, you know, we have the ability. I mean, I suppose when you look back and have a look at who's out injured, of the 6 that played the other night, we have 6 forwards who could actually start, who were on the sideline. You know, Ryan Sinky, Dara Kerwin, Jimmy Hyland, Jack Robinson, Ben McCormack. There's 5 of them. There's certainly another one. So I'm just saying, you know, we have. You have to be positive, because if you can get everybody, including that half forward line that started last week, and hopefully they'll be the ones that start this week, it gives the management problems, it gives them headaches. But when you're trying to close out a game and you can bring in only 2 or 3 of those into a game, yeah, that's massive. So yeah, look, there's frustrating points, there's points that you see that you think we need to improve on, but I think it'll be a good year. I think we'll get what we deserve out of it. It's a process. I mentioned it last week. Davy was, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, and we have to be patient. But Division 2, that's where we want to be. That's where we want to stay. And whatever comes after that is a bonus.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks indeed to those viewers and listeners for sending in those questions. And I'm sure, Tommy, maybe we'll make that a bit of a regular feature. And anybody who wants to have a comment, particularly as the games starting to roll, we can definitely take on more viewers' comments. It's always great to hear from people who are tuned in and listening in. It makes us feel that we aren't just talking to ourselves, and there are actually people at home paying attention to what we're saying. But yeah, I suppose we'll leave the Outborn Cup there. It's been a decent run out for Kildare, and good preparation for what's to come. And it's the big one now on Saturday evening. On one hand, it's probably the most difficult game that Kildare could have wished to have in Division 2 to start off the season. But on the other hand, there is a school of thought that says maybe this is the best time to play at their own side, who maybe are still at a bit of an experimental stage themselves. Remarkably, I suppose, enough that they were relegated from Division 1 when they finished just 1 point behind eventual league winners, Kerry, such was the tightness of Division 1 last year. And of course, they went all the way to an All-Ireland semi-final there as well. Kildare's record against Tyrone is not good, to say the least. That league win, the league final win in Division 2 in 2012 is the only win that Kildare have in just about 30 years against the men from Tyrone. So a really difficult game in store. And Tommy, I suppose it would be difficult if Kildare had their full choice team to pick from and were full strength in their squad. The fact that the squad is so stretched at the moment, yeah, it makes this one just a really daunting prospect. And even as I said, maybe there is a school of thought that Tyrone are a little bit experimental at this stage themselves. You know, when Kildare are so stretched, it probably doesn't matter for a whole lot about what Tyrone are doing.
Yeah, I suppose it's very true. Listen, it's the most difficult game in the league on paper. As the league goes on and different scenarios pop up, there are other games that are suddenly going to be far more important, and just games will get bigger and more important as they go on. In my own opinion, this is the best time to play Tyrone. You have to be confident going up. You just because everybody's expecting Kildare to get a trimming. They're Tyrone are 7-1 on. They're at home. Kildare's record against them. Kildare's how depleted Kildare are. So Kildare are going up there, and I don't want to say it's a free hit, but nobody's expecting us to do anything up there, lads, and people are just kind of hoping just to get through it, and fingers crossed, and hopefully get some players back over the next couple of weeks. But there aren't too many Tyrone lads outside of maybe somebody like John Ball and his family in Clane listening into this, who have Tyrone connections. Nobody's going to be listening to this, and they're all going to be thinking, sure, Kildare are coming up here, and they're probably not going to know that we have huge injury problems. There's little things like that the management will know. But as in regard to fans and stuff anywhere else around the county, they're probably expecting Kildare to go up and give it a bit of a go, but ultimately, fall away and lose out. But even though we're missing so many players, there were times in that Westmeath match where you could see things happen. You could see things happen that they've done on the training ground. Different scenarios, different plays, just fast transition out from the back. And I was kind of thinking to myself, this is during the good phases, obviously, last week. It's just if they can bring this up to Tyrone and play like this, and no real kind of faffing around with the ball or anything. The ball is moving quickly. The lads are making the right runs. They're always looking forward. It was positive. Tyrone are going to be down a couple of players, but they still have so many. I don't know what the situation with the Canavans is at the moment. I think Rory might be out. I'm not sure about Dara. But they have McCurry, and I don't know what the story is with Peter Hart at the moment, but McCurry come on in the what do they call their cup up there? They're up on the McKenna Cup. By all accounts, he came on against Armagh and completely changed the game. And he's supposed to be in sparkling form again. I mean, he's been over the years, there are forwards in Tyrone that have overshadowed him because of their name and because of their high profile. But McCurry, when he has been involved, is a serious forward. Who's going to pick him up? I mean, that's something, because we do have good man markers on the field. Now it's going to depend on his position as well, and how deep he plays. And we know Harry loves to pick up these lads in these big games, both for club and county. He revels in this kind of stuff. But it's hugely difficult, Ger. It is going to be very difficult. But I don't know. I said before the Westmeath game, I genuinely have a lot of confidence in these young lads, because I think a lot of them have big characters. They're hardened through the under-20s, and I'll give you an example. A lot of these lads for their clubs are they're the senior men at the club. They might be 10 years younger than a lot, but you take Ryan Burke, for example, or even young Cully there on the screen. But Ryan Burke is already a leader for Cara in a group where the majority of the team are older than him. And that's James Harris, the same for Castle Mitchell. These are young men. They're probably one of the youngest players on their squads in their clubs, but they're already leaders in the club sense. So they're bringing all that. This stems all the way back from minors, under 20s, coming through experience in all Ireland wins, building character. Flano helped do that as well. You build these lads' characters from young lads. That's why it's so important to get your hands and mould these young lads. But I have James McGrath and other as we list them out, lads. These are boys that are very big characters, good good solid leaders on the field. That's why I have confidence, and I have quiet confidence for these lads this weekend. And if we start to see some of these experienced players coming back, that is going to help complement the youth and then we can bring back in that more experience. Again, you never know who's going to be named at the weekend. We're hoping Neil Flynn might be back fit as well after he took a knock and he was out last week. His experience in his class and him to bring those younger players through. I'm not as down and out with people looking at a young squad than I might be with normal young squads because of who these young lads are. So that's just my take on this young team, because I genuinely have a lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and they've shown it at underage level, and some of them have shown it already in their at the start of their senior careers. And we will focus on who we believe is going to be available, and each of us is going to step into the role of Brian Flanagan and try and name our starting 15 for Saturday. But just before we look at who is available, Tommy, I know you have a list there of players who aren't, and maybe just to bring people up to date, because Brian Flanagan was good enough after the game last week to go through kind of a lot of the names who are on the panel, and for us who've been hanging around dressing rooms for the last couple of games, we've seen the amount of players who are not tugging out. So just maybe just to run through, it's up on the screen there for people who are looking, watching on YouTube, but for those who are listening on audio, just to run through some of the names. And probably this isn't an exhaustive list. There's probably still some more names to be added to this as well. But some of the names that Brian Flanagan mentioned, James McGrath, he said back very close, will be in contention probably for this weekend. He was due to be back running this week, so fingers crossed for James. Ben McCormack is moving very well. They're going to be very careful with Ben because of a legacy injury that has been there for the last couple of years in a hamstring. So they won't be rushing Ben, but they hope to see him back on the field, the training field that is, within the next week or two. Jack Robinson picked up a bad hamstring injury in early December, moving well at the moment. Probably won't be back for the first couple of rounds, but hopefully after that break following the first two rounds, that maybe the game against Derry is a possibility for Jack Robinson. Dara Ryan, a little bit more protracted. He's going to be out for 6 weeks, unfortunately, with that hamstring injury. So that's an unfortunate one for Dara. That could see him out till maybe early March, but the time frame there. Jimmy Hyland rehabbing well, another one who I suppose they're not going to take any chances with, given his history. They're going to be very patient with Jimmy, so no kind of time scale of when we might see Jimmy, but you know very well that Jimmy is very committed in doing his rehab work as well as possible. Derek Kerwin had surgery in mid-November. He's back out in the field at the moment, but it's going to be another 4 or 5 weeks probably before we see Dara in contention for a starting place. Tommy Gill hopefully will be back in contention for a place in the matchday squad this weekend. Colin Dalton obviously had that hamstring with Salins that prevented him from really competing in the All-Ireland semi-final against on Gaeltacht, but he will be back hopefully within the next month or so, 4 weeks there. Jack McKevitt due to be back thereabouts this weekend, and Neil Flynn also. So Seamus, it is a pretty extensive list, and probably far from ideal preparation for Brian Flanagan to have that many players missing. But, you know, when you speak about Ben McCormack and Jimmy Hyland, I think that's kind of the prevailing feeling there within the management team there, that they're not going to rush these players. They do have a strong or big squad. You know, they might be inexperienced, but they have quality players ready to step in, and they don't feel the need to rush back these players and perhaps, you know, make an injury more serious. And again, hopefully by the time any of these players, we see them back on the field, they'll be fully recovered and any injury problems will be in the past. And then within a few weeks, that injury list is cleared up and hopefully Kildare will be much better for us.
Yeah, and if you look at that list, Ger, for anybody that's looking at it, as you said earlier, 13 players that's on that, and that's must be hugely frustrating for a management team, and especially for the players themselves. You know what I mean? To be out at maybe the most important time of the year, or certainly, you know, with the league on the horizon and in a couple of days' time. And you know, I said it earlier. You know, that there's a bucket load of talent there who are massive Kildare players, massive for the future and massive going forward. You know, with Leinster Championship even going to be early as it is. So you can appreciate that Brian Flanagan and his management team are going to be and want to be as protective and I suppose as you know, interested in their well-being with a long-term goal, a long-term future of the county, because, you know, I suppose lads and managers have done it in the past. You run somebody back in, next minute he breaks down and he's gone for another 4 or 5 weeks. So I think there's they'll err on the caution side there to make sure that lads that are coming back are ready for action. And you know, I suppose this time of the year, with pitches being so heavy, that has to be a major concern for guys, especially with hamstrings. So yeah, you'd have to appreciate from the management side of view where they are, what they're going to have to do, and see it over the line. But it's fairly exhaustive when you see 13 players, and you know, and you're hoping to go to Tyrone. I mean, if you took 13 out of that Tyrone panel with so many starters there, that they'd certainly be having their problems and be worried at the weekend. But definitely agree there's backup, there's talent, and there'll be a confidence knowing the Kildare lads, and they've good men in the sideline pushing them on. So looking forward to Saturday evening.
Yeah, we'll just to mention two other lads then as well. Dan Lynham, sorry, he's another one as well who's pushing to be fit too. Shane Farrell and Cathal Hagney, those two probably a little bit longer out, and they're recovering from more long-term injuries. So it might be towards the end of the league or even towards the championship, hopefully before Cathal and Shane are back involved in the thick of things as well. So with all that in mind, Tommy, the three of us have tried to pick our own teams, and obviously a little bit difficult to kind of second guess the fitness and the state of fitness of some of those players that we've mentioned. But we have tried to pick together our teams. Okay, so I'm going first there. Thanks, Tommy. You've pitched me in there. So I'll run through my starting 15, or how I see it anyway. This is as well trying to maybe not pick my starting 15, but maybe try and get as close to the 15 that we might expect to see Brian Flanagan name on Saturday. So yeah, I've gone with Keane Burke in goal. Maybe wasn't the most convincing performance on Saturday Friday evening from Keane, but I think he had a very solid year last year on his debut season. So yeah, I'll give him the nod for number one there. We have heard rumours perhaps of Aaron O'Neill returning to the squad, which would be an interesting one. He hasn't played a huge amount in goal over the last couple of years, but he maybe has been back in with training with the squad as well. So that's something perhaps to keep an eye on going forward. A full-back line then of Harry O'Neill, Brian Byrne and Ryan Burke. I just prefer Brian in that full-back line. I think out in half-back probably doesn't suit him, although he did a great game there against Offaly in the Taunton Cup in Newbridge last year. But I think he's better suited to that full-back line, and the positions don't really matter these days anymore, is it? It's just a full-back line, and then I suppose it's about the matchups and which player is going to pick up who on the opposing team. So it doesn't really matter if it's a full-back or a cornerback these days, but that's what I've gone then. And yeah, worryingly then I've gone for a mix of inexperience and I suppose a player who hasn't played a huge amount of game time. So yeah, James McGrath would be fantastic if he's fully fit and able to play, and that's maybe a bit of a shot in the dark. I don't think he's played a game since he was in the Leinster semi-final for the last time for a tie. He tried to run it off in the warm-up for the Leinster final and didn't make it due to a hamstring injury, but by all accounts he is close, so it would be a real boost to have a player of his quality available. James Harris, I think he's been excellent through the pre-season competitions and is fully deserving of his place, and I'm looking forward to seeing him get a place, and perhaps even he could be a long-term number 6 for Kildare as well. For that number 6 jersey then, I've gone for Owen Lawler, and there's a couple of other defenders, I suppose, in the mix. Mark Dempsey hasn't seen a huge amount of game time. Porrick Spillane, I think, is somebody who will see a lot of as the year goes on, but Owen Lawler is the one who's played there, a centre half-back. I would be a little bit wary of putting somebody so inexperienced in such a key and pivotal role, but I just have a feeling that could be a problem position for Kildare through the year, and obviously the departure of David Hyland, the retirement of David Hyland from that position that he played so well there last year, leaves a vacant spot, and it has to be filled. Lawler is a player of huge potential, but yeah, it might be a bit of a big ask, but he definitely has, I think, the long-term potential to fill a role in the Kildare backline, so maybe he'd be the one pitched in. Midfield in the early part of the season, it looks like it's going to be a Kevin Feely and Brendan Gibbons partnership. Maybe not fully convinced on Brendan Gibbons still yet. I think he definitely has the makings of a fine midfield player. He certainly has all the physical attributes that you would like to see. But I suppose we're a little bit short of midfield options as well, and that is a worry that. Especially maybe looking at Kevin Feely, are we going to get 70 minutes out of Kevin every week, week in, week out through the league, and then heading into the championship as the ground starts to harden up and the pace of the game gets even quicker? But again, look, seeing Kevin there the other night against Westmeath, he is just going to be such a hugely important player. But at the same time, maybe there are moments in the season that we'll have to wrap him and cut him. Well, I suppose the other option maybe Colin Bolton, I've named him at half forward there. Maybe he could come out to midfield as well. He obviously has the pace and the athleticism as well around the centre of the field as well to add to that. So that's another option. And long term, again, looking down the line, I think Darragh Mangan will get an opportunity at some stage through the year as well. And Dan Lynham was on the panel there too. But Darragh Mangan in particular, I'd be interested in seeing later on in the year. The half forward line that I've picked is the same one that started the game last Friday evening, and it's probably the strongest line there at the team at the moment. Brian McLaughlin and Alex Byrne, I think, are among the first names on the team sheet, and Callum Bolton too. It's just a matter of whether he's going to be wing forward or in midfield. And I'm expecting big things and hoping for big things at Callum Bolton this year. I'm a huge fan of him as a player, so I really think he can kick on this season. And McLaughlin is really starting to nail down that position on number 10. And Alex Byrne, we've said it all about him. He's an absolute key man for Kildare, and if Kildare are going to go well this year, they'll need Alex Byrne firing on all cylinders. into the full forward line, and again taking a bit of a flyer on the fitness of some of these guys. Ryan Stinky was on the bench last week. He didn't come on. I was a little bit surprised at that. I thought, having had a bit of an injury and being named amongst the subs, I thought he would have got on the field maybe even for just 10 or 15 minutes against Westmeath to try and get a bit of game time into him. But I don't know what's going on behind the doors as well. But just hopefully that Ryan is fit to start. Neil Flynn, would be great to see him again back. Obviously, he linked up with the squad in the back end of the Talta Cup last year. Started down in Wexford, didn't play then against Dublin or Westmeath at the start of this year, and we're told that he's relatively near fitness from last week, so hopefully he will be fit and can play some part in this game, and he's somebody that I really look forward to seeing, get a good look at him now under the new rules, and I think he could be a real monster from around the 2-point line as well, whether it's from set piece or from play. And then the last one on my team is somebody that I'm just so excited to see this year, Owen Cully from Carberry. Absolutely electric pace, and the pace of of him just is something that we're really looking forward to seeing. So that's definitely a player that I can't wait to see again. A lot of game time under his belt. And just the other one then as well, Tommy Gill, I would love to find a place in my team for him as well. Again, his pace and athleticism from the back line, but very often as well, I suppose, in the modern game, it's about who you bring in for the last 10, 15 minutes as well. And if you have the likes of a Tommy Gill coming in, Jack McKevitt as well as another one, hopefully who's not too far away from playing as well, and they would have huge pace. So yeah, there's, for what it's worth, my starting 15. I don't think if Brian Flanagan had to leave his post for whatever reason, that I'd be getting a call to look after the Kildare team. I wouldn't be holding my breath on that one. But yeah, there's trying to take everything on board with the injuries and everything else. What I would maybe think close to what Brian Flanagan will pick on starting.
Very good.
Yes, yes, step in there, Seamus.
Yes, here we go. Yeah, look, if there's a bit of familiarity with some of the players that are there, maybe have moved around bits and pieces, but in goals for Keane Burke as well. Yeah, certainly, there were some aspects last weekend that you'd be worried about, but Keane has ever let Kildare down. I think he's a class goalkeeper, brilliant shot stopper, and he needs 1 or 2 games under his belt to re-cement that position in the goals, and I think they'll go with him again. Harry O'Neill, you don't have to say a whole lot about Harry and his ability at cornerback. He's been outstanding. Brian Byrne in the other corner. Look at his experience. He's a great game reader. He talks a lot. He brings other guys into the game, and he's very, very cool and calm on the ball. But that would go for that. And then in the centre, I've gone for Pádraig Spillane. I thought there were moments in the game last week. There was one outstanding piece of defending, Ger, you spoke about it during commentary, when Kevin Feely stood up Luke Loughlin and pushed him into the corner and turned him and did everything bar let him get away a shot. And I seen Pádraig Spillane doing that maybe a couple of minutes after that, and look at it. It goes without saying, I think he's a very, very good defender. He's only going to get better, as you say, and I think he might just get another chance at the weekend. I think Michael, the brother, could be the one that's pushing him maybe for a starting position, but I've gone for that. James Harris has done enough over the last couple of weeks to have his place there at right half back. James McGrath, without a doubt, if he's back to fitness, he is somebody at centre half back who would really, really be looking forward to seeing. And I think he will bring that aspect of security and a bit of a tough defender there. You watch him playing for a tie, and mostly a wing back, but I've seen him playing at centre back for a tie in the past. He plays that role of a holding role, which I think is, like I said earlier, something that we need. If he doesn't make it, I probably would have looked at the Raheen's defender. His name now, the terrible escapes me there. Sorry,
Crowley.
Darragh Crowley. Yeah, Darragh Crowley. Sorry. I thought after maybe a sluggish start against Dublin that he grew into the game, and certainly he's one for the future. But I wouldn't be fearful, even though, and again, Owen Lawler. So it could come down to either of the two of those. I said last week, I think Lawler long term is the man for there. But and then Ryan Burke, I think he picks himself. He's been solid throughout the last campaign or two. Really, really good defender. Pace, he can get forward, and he's I think he's definite to start. The midfield picks itself. Kevin has been outstanding. His ability to get up and down the field at his age and his fitness levels are unbelievable. And Brendan Gibbons, I think, has a lot more to offer. he's hasn't hit full potential, and I think that it's a big season for him. Half forward line, a bit like last week, and probably everybody is in the same boat. It picks itself with Mackey, Alex Byrne, and the other side is Callum Bolton. Yeah, look at he was good last week, and I think maybe in his interview, as he pointed out, for everybody that's trying to mix Sigerson and play O'Byrne Cup matches, it's tough, but a very, very positive attitude when I spoke to him last week after the match, and that's good to see. Ryan Sinky at corner forward, Brian Flanagan probably knows as much and knows more about Ryan Sinky than anybody. He was a regular throughout the whole of last season. Even after playing under 20 matches, maybe of a Wednesday or Thursday night, he was straight in a corner forward come the National League. And if he's right, he'll be there. We saw his ability in the county final, probably the one shining light at that Nate's forward line that afternoon against the Tie. I've gone for a bit of a Springer, I suppose, for the want of a better word, because maybe listening to rumours and also going on Brian Flanagan's about seeing him in the next week or two, and I suppose I don't know whether that was for the training field or the playing field, but it just could be maybe just a little bit of a surprise. And again, Owen Cully is without saying, he's an exciting prospect. I'm looking forward to seeing him. I think we can get him on the ball a lot more. I think we can utilise his pace. There were times last week when, as I said, he was making those runs, and then, Ben Lokeman was making the same run. So he, in fairness to Owen, it just didn't work out for him. But anytime he gets that ball, he's either getting a shot away or he's getting fouled. And as I said, that's the team I've gone for. I think there are, the likes of Neil Flynn at that. Ben Lokeman, in fairness to him, kicked a couple of very good points last week, especially one, I think, early in the second half off the outside of the boot. Brilliant score, and he has massive ability. So plenty of backup there. So hopefully we'll be somewhere near to 15 when it's named on Friday night.
Okay, thank you, Seamus. There's a lot here that I won't repeat. As in, like, I won't. We'll make sure it won't be repetitive anyway, because it's a lot of the same. But yeah, I've gone for Keane in goals as well. I think Didier will always be there snapping at his heels. But I think we saw later on in Tad's Cup last year that Keane had that position kind of locked down. I wonder as well, lads, as regards Didier, I don't think we're utilising his boot enough when he's playing. I genuinely think, you see some counties that, like Niall Morgan's a good example. A few of these lads, like, there's a shot from 50 metres, 55, they're taking it on in the correct conditions. Like, you saw Didier play for 2 Mile House this year. What did he score in one game? 13, 14, 15 points? Like, it was crazy. Like, it was crazy what he was, and the way he was kicking. Now, I know there was a wind there that day, but everybody in the whole county has known his boot. So anyway, I've gone with Keane because I don't think Didier was playing in goals enough. Not since obviously in with Kildare last year, in with Kildare this year. But I think Keane Burke is probably the number one actual goalkeeper that we have at the moment. As I said, Didier isn't too far away. I know Sheen as well. I think might be slightly injured at the moment, but he's definitely on the scene this year. So it's great to see him pushing in the background as well. Harry O'Neill, cornerback, again, himself and Mackey for 2 weeks in a row were my 2 players in the game. Harry was brilliant again last week. New element to his game this year, moving forward a lot. Saw it again against Westmeath. Such an important player. I mean, I saw one stage he was picking up a dirty ball on the sideline, 3 Westmeath lads around him, and he got out there and passed the ball out. He's a huge player for us. I'd be fascinated to see who he's going to pick up. I went for Padraig Splana full back as well. I think the game time he's been getting over the last couple of weeks might show us where Flano's head is at. Really like him as a defender as well. As Ger said, that Mick is probably one putting the most pressure on him, which is great from our point of view. But athletic player, another man who made a couple of bursts up the field. Now it was all tactical because players had covered back, but at one stage he wasn't sprinting. He just made a run and he went for the full back line and he ended up in the full forward line and he stayed there for a minute or two. So it went. Not many people kind of noticed it because he didn't get on the ball, but it was a bit of an interesting one because he's well able to move. I went for Ryan Burke at cornerback. Obviously, we know he's athletic enough to play further out the field. But I just think he's played there enough now for Kildare to have that position. lockdown for himself. Another man who's not a bad man marker either, considering the forwards are going to be faced at the weekend. I went for Brian Byrne at wing back because, again, it just seems that's where Flano might be seeing him this year. Whether it's his best position, I'm not so sure. I might agree with Ger there that I would like to see him at full back. I actually swapped the wings that we normally see them on. So I put James Harris on left half back. We know he's normally number 5, or has been for the few games that he's played senior football. I personally see him doing his best football from the left wing, cutting in. He's a powerful young man, but I think that, again, lads, look at the teams that are doing damage against us from half back, which our viewer comment said that we've said. Like, James could be that one for us because he's so athletic and he's such a big boot on. So again, I have him left half back because I think the damage he can do coming in off the left could be quite significant for us if he is playing. I went with Owen Lawler centre half back mainly because I don't know about James McGrath's fitness. If he is fit, James will always be pushing for that jersey or the 7 jersey or the 5 jersey or any of them at all. But for now, I'm a big fan of Owen Lawler, have been for the last few years. Obviously, his injury didn't help his progression. I like the kind of cut of his jib. I like the way he plays football. He's tall, he's lean. You know, he's a strong athlete. So I'd like to see him in that 6th position, or improving in that 6th position as well. So he might be on the radar for the weekend. Feely and Gibbons in the middle, as Seamus said, they picked themselves, which, it's Brendan Gibbons in the first half of the Tailteann Cup final was brilliant. And people kind of forget that because he fell away a little bit in the second half because the game was going a different direction. Hope I have that game right. I think it was one of the Crow Park games. I'm pretty sure it was Tailteann Cup final. But he was superb. He's brilliant in the air. I mean, he's such a strong physical man. Like, he could really, and he's more of an athlete, I think, than people give him credit for either. He really is impressive. I wouldn't mind now. He made a few drifts into the full forward line against Westmeath, but he didn't get the ball. But we saw the carnage he caused for Kilcock this year. I mean, the goals he scored when he does drift in that far could be a useful tool as well if we go the long ball route. Kevin Feely's going to get in every team every week if he's fit. So please God, he keeps his form and his fitness up because he's so influential. Alex Byrne the same, one of the first names in team sheet. Mackie, Callum Bolton either side. Again, Brian McLaughlin, for me, the best Kildare player for the last couple of weeks. Showing great form. Callum Bolton. Ger, again, you said you're such a fan of his. Really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do this year. I'd like to see him getting on the ball more. I hate to see him chasing around the place looking for the ball. I want him to be a little bit of a target man because he's 2-footed. I mean, if you ever watch Callum Bolton running with the ball, head up, soloing with both feet, that's the kind of stuff you see lads from Kerry and Tyrone doing, soloing with both feet, lovely athlete, kicks the ball on the run, just wonderful player. Ryan Sinke, I think, might start. I think it was a good indication seeing him back on the bench. Every time we thought Ryan Sinke wasn't going to play last year, he played. So if it was for the under-20s, he played at the weekend for the seniors. We thought Sinke won't play. He played. If he's fit, I'm playing him corner forward, starting every game. So I went with Ben Lokeman full forward. Again, I don't know about Ben McCormick's fitness. I'd be very careful with Neil Flynn because I think he's going to be such an important player for us this year. If Neil did get a knock, they kept him out from last week. Maybe he might want to hold him back onto the bench this week. Thought Ben Lokeman was very impressive at times last week, running at defence. That's what he did for the under-20s as well. Think he might give him a shot full forward because he likes to move out the field a little bit as well, looking for the ball. And Owen Cully is one we're all talking about. We're all looking forward to see how he gets on. I echo what Seamus says. Get him on the ball more. That's the big thing that Cully wants. Only needs half a yard and he's taking the shot on. So that's my pick.
Just having a quick thought up there, I reckon about far off 10. I think we're fairly aligned on there. So yeah, so it's starting to take shape, I suppose. One player who wasn't mentioned there, who I think will definitely be on the field at some stage, maybe not as a starter, but he'll be one of the first subs in, is Dara Swords, who I thought was excellent off the bench against Dublin. I think it was the first sub there against Westmeath as well. So I'd expect Dara Swords to be on the pitch at some stage as well. And yeah, there are options on the bench as well. So yeah, well, so a lot to look forward to. I'm not going to suppose, put us, any of us, on the spot in terms of maybe asking for predictions. But yeah, we just hope for a good first round. I think we all agree it is a tough prospect in store in Healy Park, and anything that Kildare can get out of that probably is going to be seen as a bonus, and then a really huge game against Offaly next week. But you can be sure that there's nobody in the Kildare camp looking past Saturday evening, and that is the match that is preoccupying the minds at the moment, and we wish Brian Flanagan and the squad the very best of luck. So we're going to move now, and we do, of course, have the Kildare hurlers to come, but we're going to stay on preview mode because also this weekend it stays the start of the LGFA leagues, and Division 1 in particular. I think Division 4 started last week, but from a Kildare point of view, Division 1 gets underway this weekend, and again, it's a really tough, daunting prospect for a Kildare side. Pat Sullivan's ladies team heading to Cork, not quite Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but a game in the Munster Technological University Arena, and against the famed Cork side, who of course have been one of the best sides in the country for the best part of 3 decades now. So it's a whole new ball game, Tommy, in terms of, I suppose, the game itself. So many new rules. That ladies football is in the situation that men's football was in 12 months ago, with a whole raft of rule enhancements, I suppose, as they're called, and a whole new ball game as well in terms of the squad, because much like the men's squad as well, there's a huge turnover of players and a lot of new faces, some familiar faces missing, and a very youthful feel to the team and the squad that Pat Sullivan will send to the field on Sunday.
Yeah, again, kind of similar to the men's team as well. A long journey playing against a well-established team. Again, Kildare, the team that were playing in Division 1 last year, Cork didn't. Cork came up from Division 2. Obviously, they had got relegated previously as well. So they were runners-up in Division 2. I'm pretty sure Galway won it. So they're coming back in. They were in somewhat of a transition period as well, but they were impressive enough in the All-Ireland series last year to show exactly what they're about. A young squad. Ger met a lot of them last Sunday morning in Hawkfield, and just a really enthusiastic, good bunch. It's great to see some, like the usual faces there as well. Like, that leadership team we see. Like, Alicia's obviously in, and Ruth Sargent as vice captain as well. And then we can see the leadership team as well. It's just there is a good mix of youth and experience, because those young players that are in there, I mean, like, if you look at we talked about Ruth Dillon last week and how good Ruth is, but then, like, we saw Alana Priceman. So Alana Priceman kind of broke onto the scene last year as someone we were looking as, the natural replacement of somebody like Roisin or Nessa, who are moving on. But Alana's also on the leadership team this year. I think that's extremely telling. She's one of only 3 girls on that team, on that leadership team, with Ciara Wheeler and Hazel McLaughlin. So for Alana to be already on that leadership team, it shows the trust that Pat Sullivan already has in her. And she showed it in big games last year against your Kerrys, your Meath, your Dublin, your Armagh. So it's a huge year for her as well. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how she gets on. I see a couple of players, other young players in there, Abby Cahill, Aoife Murnane, who's on the graphic there. A lot of people might not have been too aware of her last year, because again, she was very young last year. She's probably coming off the bench a bit. I think she might have started some games or was down to start, but got replaced at the last minute. She's a really exciting young player. I remember seeing her playing for the Kildare Miners. I mean, she is an absolute rocket. So she's definitely one to look out for this year as well. And the Kilcullen trio of Wally Aspel, Ellen Coleman, Nancy Murphy. Again, I wouldn't have known Ellen and Nancy that well, but I was chatting to them last week. They're extremely enthusiastic as well about getting involved with this group. So again, you're taking this experience and you're bringing in these younger players. I was listening back to the pod last week, and we weren't all doom and gloom, but we were very much kind of like talking about the players that aren't there anymore. And we were right to do it. We were right, because it was extremely significant when you're looking at team sheets. But I think the likes of, again, Leisha and Hazel and Mia Doherty, even Laura Dunlea, who was there last year, the Wheelers, Lara Kern, her influence is going to be huge this year as well. Lara is she wasn't as involved probably a couple of years ago as she would have wanted to be, and she stepped aside for a little bit. Hugely experienced. She's back in again this year, and you're kind of, I'm wondering where they play Lara, because she's such a good footballer. Like, she was always a corner forward. a corner forward kind of pushing out the field. I'm wondering, will she be operating a bit more around midfield this year? It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, like, as I already mentioned, like Leisha and her experience with Hayes, like seeing Hayes and McLaughlin come back in, lads, is huge. Like missing through that horrible bloody ACL injury as well. Missing for the majority of last year. Back in, got a bit of football with Eadstown for the club this year, and now back in there. And again, part of the leadership team. Ger, I know you spoke to her last weekend. Like, I mean, she's a very important character for that team as well. She's been around a good few years. Brilliant footballer. Also brings that bit of physicality they might be missing as well with so many young players on the team. Roisin Ford abroad, probably didn't mention it enough last week. Roisin was involved in Diane's year. Was pushing for us to be on that starting six of those forwards. Had a brilliant league campaign, averaging 3-4 points a game. Then, of course, what happened? ACL, which always happens. These brilliant young players. And Roisin, as we know, is an accomplished camogie player, probably one of the best Kildare camogie players of the past decade. And that's no exaggeration. So to see Roisin back playing football, now I presume she's not going to be playing camogie. So obviously that won't exactly benefit our camogues, who we'll be talking about in the next couple of weeks as well. But very excited to see Roisin back playing football. Really happy to see her back on that squad. So listen, it's a difficult game, but sure, I mean, I have the list here, the leagues up, which we didn't look at last week either. I mean, look at those fixtures. Like saying that, like, look at the teams that have to play. But we did the exact same last year. And the only difference is that Galway and Cork last year was Mayo and Tyrone. So we're looking at all these fixtures and we were thinking, they'd be doing extremely well to stay up. They were favourites to go down. And they did stay up. And they had some absolutely brilliant performances. Probably should have got one or two more wins in some close games that they had. Brought that form into the Leinster Championship, into the All-Ireland Series. Brilliant performance against Kerry at the very end, and finally going out to them. They were just a fantastic year last year. So some huge games on the horizon, Ger, like Cork away, Armagh home, then they're away to Galway, at home to Dublin. The Meath game is the only game where the fixture is confirmed for Saturday the 28th, St. Conleth's Park at 4:30. Trying to think what else is on that day. Are Kildare playing that day?
But there is, yeah. Are you giving us an exclusive here, or?
So Kildare play Meath that day, don't they?
Yeah.
So I'm telling you now, that fixture is on the LGFA website. So if you can tell me, that's a double header.
Yeah, there was talk of Kildare playing Meath as well on the men's side of things. There was talk of potential, but that was being complicated by television coverage as well. I think both teams were on respective channels, TG Car and RTE. But yeah, if they've been away around that will be a fantastic occasion and definitely one to really look forward to. But
so I'm just saying, Jared, that fixture is one of, and I'm talking all 7 rounds after that first round. Most of the fixtures are TBC for venues, and times are all 2 p.m. It's the only fixture on the official LGFA website now, just in case you think I'm slipping this in somewhere. It's the only fixture on the LGFA website that the fixture is confirmed, and the time is completely different than all the other fixtures. It's down at 4:30 p.m. St. Conleth's Park. So I think, Jerry, you do have an exclusive on this podcast.
We're getting good. We had breaking news last week now as well in terms of the team being announced. And yeah, just looking at the GAA website, 7 o'clock in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. The men are due to play Meath as well. So that's according to the 2 respective websites, that's a double header, and that would be an exciting occasion. Definitely the first one in front of the newly developed grounds there in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. And we would be hopeful, I suppose, the ladies would get a real opportunity to play at that venue. They deserve that Division 1. I mean, absolutely, when you see the scale of some of those games to come. But you also have a graphic, Tommy, I think, of the rule enhancements. Seamus, 12 rule enhancements. I think half of them are very familiar to us who have watched a lot of men's football, and in terms of the 2-point score, the arc, the 3v3 structure. But the one thing that I think a lot of the ladies footballers have been crying out for, and speaking again to Ruth Sargent there last Sunday, she said, the players have been asking for more physicality brought into the game. These are well-toned, fit, strong, hardy athletes as well who want the physicality in the game. They want to be able to fight for the ball, and they're well able to. So at last, Ruth Sargent said, it's I suppose beyond time. She didn't quite say that, but she said it was great that the powers to be are finally listening to the players and allowing this physicality to come into the game. I think it says not quite full contact, and I don't think a shoulder charge is allowed, but there will be far more element of a contact allowed in terms of challenging for the ball, which is what the players have been asking for a number of years now.
Yeah, I think, of all the changes, I think in the ladies' football, all those things like the 3-on-3, the 2-point arc, forward freeze, the descent element of, and the solo and go are all what's there in the men's game. And I think the girls deserve that. I think it has improved the men's game over the last, since they were brought in, over the last year and a year and a half, whatever it's been. So it's certainly, yes, if it does anything to improve that, but without a doubt. And, I've seen ladies' matches. I haven't seen as many maybe as we should see, but, wherever time allows us to be able to go and wherever there's no clashes or whatever it is, but certainly, yes, that tackle is massive in the game because, from a defensive point of view, even, for the likes of Ruth Sargent or Leisha Lennon or whoever it might be, to make that last gasp tackle. And it's fairly defined in the sense that, it's the ball with an open hand. But if you've someone tearing down on goal and you can get that hand in and to break the ball away and save it, scores a goal scoring opportunity, it's massive. And, from that point of view, we've seen matches, every one of us over the last couple of years. It's frustrating, when the girls do go to make a tackle, the next minute's a free and it's gone the other way. And that's, so look at, well done to the LGFA for, tinkering with it, for the want of a better word, but implementing it, I think, is most important. And it'll probably take a while for referees maybe to adjust to it as same as the players. But as I say, it's fairly defined. It's fairly straightforward. It's an open hand, and that's a massive plus for the girls that are playing as well as everything else.
Yes, I think those rules are brought in for the opening 3 rounds. There's a break of a couple of weeks then until the 4th round, so there will be something of a review and a chance for all the stakeholders to come together, the players, the referees, and those involved in the LGFA, and maybe review that and see what is working and what isn't working, and there may be some tinkering then at that stage. But Tommy, it is good to see, and especially that solo and goal as well. That's something that I think will have a big impact on the ladies' game and allow really the ladies' athleticism to show, and again put on a showcase of their athletic abilities, which that they certainly have. And I think anybody who's watched the Kildare team over the years, nobody's ever complained about a lack of entertainment with this Kildare side. That they give it absolutely everything. They've been involved in some cracking encounters, and Division 1 All-Ireland series to come as well, Leinster Championship as well. That they're in for the big season, you'd hope. Second year under Pat Sullivan as well. That's a big thing too. He's obviously spent a huge amount of time, and we obviously referenced Brian Flanagan as well, and the time that he would have spent looking at championship games. And that's something that Pat Sullivan said, that's from junior B to senior, they were on the ground throughout the club championships in Kildare. Probably didn't have the chance to do that last year. They were probably only brought in maybe after the club championship. So this was the first opportunity that Pat and his management team had to do that. They made full use of that. And although we might say there are some players missing, for various reasons, Pat Sullivan could not be more happy, delighted, and confident with the 37 players that he has ready to go to war with in Division 1 this season.
Yeah, and when you see what Pat got out of the group last year in his first year, how often do you see somebody coming in fresh into a team in any sport and doing so well in the first year, really hitting the ground running, and coming in where it was that team's first year up in Division 1. And they were in the senior championship and stuff like that. So for him to have another pre-season, for want of a better word, and get to know a lot of these girls, and we can see, look at the turnaround in the squad. They obviously have had boots on the ground, and they can see these girls, and they're running their trials. They're serious men in there. These lads that Pat and his backroom team, and they're doing a huge job. They'll be under no illusions. The scale of a lot of the tasks that they have, especially obviously with that turnaround the squad, but these new rules, I think, will definitely suit Kildare with the athleticism that we've seen from Kildare teams over the last couple of years. As you said, especially that solo and goal, the amount of times you'd see it, because the tackle was so frustrating and infuriating at times for fans, especially when we're trying to get so many new fans to watch ladies football. And these are people that would have watched Gaelic games, the men's game for years. And then to see Kildare doing quite well, I'll start watching the Kildare team, which is what you want. You want more fans, but they're watching it for the first time. How frustrating was it for fans last year and the year before, suddenly going to matches and seeing somebody being pulled up for what in their mind is a nothing tackle? And then they're getting frustrated with the referee, and you can hear it at matches. Referee, what are you doing? Like they're screaming at the ref, and why was that pulled up? And they didn't understand that there's less physicality in the game. But if you talk to any of these girls, I spoke to a lot of them over the last couple of years, like they want that extra physicality. They're conditioned now in a way that they've never been, and they are, and they want that contact, and they want to be going into contact, and they want to just play football. It's just let them play football. Like I think they should have probably released the tackle even more. I can understand how they're very particular on what they say, but they can make incidental contact with the body while tackling the ball. Or the one down the bottom, players can use hands to delay an opponent's movement below shoulder height, but then must release the tackle ball. Fair enough. Like, I mean, that's a bit. It's probably a bit too much in that now. You don't want the girls overtaking it, but you want them tackling. You do. You want that physicality into it because I think it adds to it. It removes the frustration. I'm trying to word this correctly. I really hope that the referees approach this in the right way. You can get very set in your ways. It's a very specific and a very important role to be a referee in ladies Gaelic football. You have to ensure you know all the rules. And as frustrating as the referees understand it can be for people on the line, they have to enforce them. So I just hope that all the referees do open up and embrace these rules. And I am talking about that physicality rule. I absolutely am talking about the physicality rule. And I just hope, because we want the game to flow. They brought in the tap and go as well, or the solo and go rule, because they want the game to flow. They want all this. So just less whistle. Let the girls play. If something is borderline attack, let it go. Just let it go. Let them play. The 2-point arc, Roisin Byrne is sitting somewhere and she is biting the lips off herself, thinking, imagine the damage she could have done and the shot she could have taken off. Nessa Dooley sunning herself on a beach over there now. Has pictures that they should put up, and she's loving life out there and sunshine and white sands. She's also thinking to herself, I wouldn't mind jinking around a few defenders and taking a pot shot for a 2-pointer. The only other score in Ladies football that, apart from a goal and a point, that was worth more was the 45. 45 was worth 2 points in Ladies football for the last number of years. I've never seen one being kicked. I think one was kicked in the championship a couple of years ago, but I've never seen one being kicked. I've seen Nessa try kick a few, but these 40 yards different. This is out of your hands. This is absolutely possible. So looking forward to seeing and it might also cause a bit of carnage, Ger, because if girls are taking them on, what's happened there? Big high ball is dropping into the box as well. So I just think it is. It's going to be great for the game. It's just so many of these games clash with the men's games as well. That's going to be frustrating to try to watch as many as possible. But I would encourage anybody that does get a chance to go watch his Kildare team to go and roar them on, because as you said, Jared, it is brilliant entertainment.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
no, sorry, Tom, for cutting across. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's great to see another Kildare team. Well, they're the only Kildare team, I suppose, keep competing at the absolute highest level that they can. So, yeah, the very best of luck to Pat Sullivan and his team as they start out Division 1 National League season. So, dogs in the background here getting very excited about the National League season start. Moving on to another side now, very worthy of support. Seamus, we're going to move on to away from dogs. We're going to go down and talk about the cats now, because last week we were here talking about Kildare's trip to Callan to take on Kilkenny, and I suppose there was an element of trepidation. Kilkenny are an outstanding team, even if they weren't at full strength, and we weren't quite sure what to expect about Kildare going down to Callan, but my word, they put up some showing. And yes, it is only the Walsh Shield, and of course there's much bigger games to come, but the sight of Kilkenny scampering and bringing on some of their star names off the bench to avoid an embarrassing defeat on their behalf just told us whole story about how good Kildare were.
Yeah, Ger, it was a really, really wonderful performance from Brian Dowland's charges, and with a team that started without 6 of the team that had played in the McDonagh Cup final. From that point of view, it was really, really encouraging, and guys like James Dillon coming in to score a goal and a point. He certainly put his hand up for starting place. Had an in and out sort of a game against Antrim the previous week, but he certainly got up to speed last weekend, and some really good performances again. The Tom Powers and the Michael Owens has got their game time again, coming in to play against the likes of Kilkenny, which was massive for them. But Michael Walsh, former Kilkenny goalkeeper, son of Ollie Walsh, was on duty with Brendan Hennessy on Sunday afternoon, and I spoke to him at half time, and he couldn't say enough about Kildare, and an endorsement coming from somebody like himself was just massive. But he said to me, "Do you know something, Seamus?" He said, "We're going to have to bring in a few of the boys to get over the line." And he said that that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen in Kilkenny. And he said that's no disrespect to Kildare, but he said we're getting hurling here. He said, like, I never thought of it. And there was one, I suppose, remark before the match from a member of the press, a Kilkenny member, and he said to me, "Is there any provision for stop taking the score or cutting this off maybe before it's over, should it get out of hand?" And I said, no, don't think so. But when I said that to Brian Dowell and Conor Shea when the match was over, there was a fair look on their faces, and I won't tell you the words that were used, but look, these lads have come off a McDonagh win. They've come into this season with their tails up, massively encouraged by what they can bring to the table. And that's hurling level. Apart from Mossy Keown's goal in the first half, I think Brian Dowling did say in his interview, Liam O'Reilly, Ryan Bourne and Dan O'Mara were absolutely outstanding, and anything that was in there and a Kilkenny full forward line got absolutely no change. It was just actually, when you look back at it afterwards, the level of skill, these guys weren't out of place, and you're heading into the National League now, certainly buoyed by what happened last Sunday. Look, at Kilkenny won in the end because they were able to bring in the likes of Owen Cody, Richie Reid, and a few more of them just to see it over the line, and they had to do that. And I think what's his name, the Kilkenny manager afterwards was very complimentary of Kildare. He was very complimentary of Kildare and what they brought to the table, and he was under no illusion about the standard and the skill of the Kildare boys. And as Brian Dowling said, better than 10 training sessions to have played in that and brought it back. And great to see on Sunday, maybe for the first time, without being togged out, the likes of Simon Lacey, Cathal Dowling, James Burke is there at every beck and call. He's mad for action, but and then you have the likes of Dara Melville, picked up a small bit of a hamstring injury after 2 minutes after coming on against Antrim. David Qualter is back doing a bit of strength work. I think he has a bit of strength work coming on board over the next week or two, or testing the shoulder, so he's on the way back. And I suppose that the highlight of Sunday afternoon was the return of Conan Bourne, Ger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Conan Bourne, I was kind of thinking earlier in the week, it's, to put it in the soccer equivalent, since we're in the transfer window at the moment, it's like getting a £50 million signing back into the squad, because Conan Bourne at his best is an outstanding player, and really, even amongst Kildare's success last year, he was sorely missed, and what an addition he is to the squad, Tommy. And I suppose Division 1B does get underway this weekend. Carlow play Down, Wexford play Antrim, and Clare play Dublin. So Kildare do have the opportunity, I suppose, to maybe have their spies out and see all the upcoming opposition across the weekend, and have that extra week of preparation before their opening round tie away to Dublin in Parnell Park on Saturday week. But Bourne, and and Seamus mentioned, and a couple of other players coming back in as well, that really does strengthen Brian Dowling's hand, which is important, because there were times last year maybe when the options off the bench weren't exactly huge for Brian Dowling, given the nature of some of those injuries, and those it's going to take a full squad and a fully fit squad for the challenges that Kildare have lying ahead in 2026.
Yeah, huge. Just to see Conan coming back in, like, I mean, as you say, it's phenomenal to see. And we do have a few other players come back as well from injury, just to have that extra squad. There's so many, players stepping up at club level as well, and you can see them involved this year. But to have the strength and depth, because listen, we're going to be realistic as well. Like when you get into the the bones of this Division 1B campaign. Like we're going to see this weekend when people watch the highlight show. I'm sure, the Kildare lads, scouts will be knocking around the country, but the levels they're going to rise. They're hugely so they're going to need depth. God, like I hope people got a chance to watch the highlights of that match if they can or whatever last week. Because Kildare at times, like I guarantee those Kilkenny lads were absolutely delighted with that run out, because there were times, and I'd say they got their earful off Ling as well, because there were times when if any of those Kilkenny lads were kind of thinking, I'll go about 70%, or it's a Kildare lad running after me or whatever, they were mauled at times. The Kildare lads absolutely were all over them. And for Kildare to bring that intensity, because to the Walsh Cup, the Walsh Shield final, like to bring that intensity, knowing that the league is a couple of weeks away, it was so encouraging to see. That was the word that I kept hearing people use. And yes, Kilkenny brought on a few of their stars near the end. Yes, Kilkenny might have hit a few wides, but at times the confidence of the Kildare players, and Seamus, the way they flicked the ball around as well, it wasn't a case of getting the ball out of trouble and trying to just drive it up the field. It was, this is on their own, well inside their own half, little flick passes inside, Jerry Keegan run up the line, taking 1-2s with Paul Dolan going up the field. Just really impressive, confident play. Not worried about the colour of the jersey in front of them. So they're going to take all that into the league. And it's just going to be such a fascinating, interesting year for them, because, people really aren't expecting that much from them. And it's such a great place to be, because we know, what they can bring to matches. And we know the physicality and even now the strength and depth that they have. Just really genuinely can't wait for this to start in a couple of weeks. And even again to get a look at those other teams this weekend. So bring it on. Can't wait.
Yeah, there is a certain element of snobbishness around certain quarters of the hurling fraternity who look down the noses on the likes of a Kildare, likes of a Carlow. Maybe they've had similar as well in the last couple of years, and it's what will awfully have the tradition. Leash maybe have been in similar positions, but yeah, there is that kind of I suppose the standard bearers in Division 1 and the hurling fraternity don't like newcomers. And look, undoubtedly, I can imagine Kildare will be on the end of a couple of heavy defeats this year. It's going to be a long, tough season, but I'm equally sure that Kildare will cause a few surprises for teams who are underestimating Kildare. Well, yeah, they could be in for a little bit of a shock. I would not be surprised at all to see Kildare bloody a few of the big boys' noses through 2026 and cause a few upsets along the way, Seamus. And just to mention one player, a young player who's come in there, I know you mentioned him there already, but you have spoken about him, I think, at length as well, as Liam O'Reilly as well. He's somebody who's come in, and I suppose Brian Dowling has given youth an opportunity there, maybe not as experimental as Brian Flanagan has been with the footballers, but there have been some young players, and Liam got a taste of it last year as well. But he is somebody now who looks ready to step into the Kildare starting 15 and is really pushing for a place in the first round of the league in that team for Kildare.
Yeah, look, he played like a lad beyond his years at the weekend, and he was outstanding the way he played, his game reading, his pace to get away with the ball. They were so comfortable around that full back line, which was probably a really surprising aspect of the game. But look at and I said it earlier, but there are more young lads there ready to step up. Like Evan O'Brien started that match against Antrim. Liam O'Reilly came in to replace him. You've got Richie Hogan there, another Naas man that's ready to step into that cornerback position as well. Again, coming back from injury. So they're blessed with backs, they're blessed with strength. And I don't know whether Brian Dowling maybe appreciated. I asked him on Sunday, I said, with Conan coming back and getting them level, getting back onto a level playing field and with a level of fitness, did it maybe open the doors for a little bit of manoeuvring around of players. And he didn't say a whole lot, but he gave me a smile that probably indicated what I was talking about, was that maybe given an opportunity maybe to move Keane maybe a little bit further up the field. But, from that point of view, it's there's great options there. They do have the ability maybe to do stuff like that. And, I know I probably gave Dan O'Mara man of the match on Sunday from what I had seen, because I thought, between himself and Liam O'Reilly, they were absolutely outstanding. But when you take one man who's been around maybe as long as anybody else, he ended up having the Kilkenny captain taken off, I think, during the afternoon. Certainly was moved, and that was Jerry Keegan. He hit 5 points from play, and he was just, people were talking about him. He was absolutely outstanding. And on that level of form at this time of the year, when the ground gets a bit harder and Jerry's using his pace, like it's hugely encouraging. And I think, as Brian Dillon said, the fact that you're going to head into the National League, the first game being Dublin, Kildare know that they didn't do themselves justice 6 days after the McDonagh when they had them in Newbridge. I think that'll be a really good one. And they're playing a really fast, crisp game of ball. They look like they've maybe changed it up a little bit, and not everything is going down the middle. There's a lot of thought and work gone into it, and what do you call it? Keane Hogan has come in there as the goalkeeping coach. The backroom team are still there as they were, and they're really working hard on it. And look, it's great to see it, because Kilkenny walked out of there on Sunday evening with a cup, and they knew they were in a battle. And as you said, Derek Ling will be very happy going to play Offaly this weekend. And I think Brian Dowling, with a little bit of a break of a week, freshened it up. Looking forward to Crow Park in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I think I've often said down through the years.
Park, actually.
Parnell Park, yeah. I've definitely said down through the years that Jerry Keegan would look at home in or at Kilkenny team or against the Kilkenny team. So great to hear that he's played so well when he did finally get the chance to go up against the mighty Kilkenny. So we'll be speaking much more about the hurlers next week as well, before they start their league with that trip to Dublin. But that was a really impressive and encouraging performance for Brian Dowling's side. That certainly bodes well for the big challenges ahead. So we're going to leave the county scene now and move on to the Sigerson Cup and the college game. College games that are very vibrant at the moment. And just to mention a DCU team that before we start talking about Maynooth, because this DCU team have just finished against ATU Galway. I haven't got a team lineup there, but DCU presumably have the likes of Dara Swords, Niall Dolan, Jack McKevish as well, Colin Dalton, Ryan Sinky as well are also in that squad. I'm not sure about how much game time any of them got, but DCU did get a 2-point win away to ATU Galway there, 116-114. So they are through to the quarterfinals. So well done to DCU, and particularly the Kildare contingent on that DCU team. But on Tuesday evening then, again, our colleague Richard Commons was the man on the ground as Maynooth went up against Dundalk IT, and it was a couple of early goals. We spoke a lot about Owen Cully earlier on in the game, but he got an early goal to help set Maynooth University under the management of Aidan Minnock on the way. Meads Connor Duke was also on the score sheet with a goal early on. Some of the Kildare players that were involved then, Keane Burke was in goal, Rob Fitzgerald, Ryan Burke were in the full-back line. Dan Scahill, who actually played against Kildare for Westmeath last Friday, and his brother, who actually tore asunder Nace CBS earlier that afternoon for Colostra Wirra and Mullingar, and ended the Nace CBS brother Bosco side. But Dan Scahill was involved in that Maynooth University side as well. James Harris too, he played the full game as well for Maynooth University. Also Aaron Brown, Luke Killian as well, who maybe we didn't mention earlier on, who could come into the thinking for Brian Flanagan this weekend for the trip to Oma as well, and also Owen Scully as well. So strong Kildare contingent. We await the quarter-final draw now, Tommy, but I suppose we would have expected Kildare to overcome Dundalk IT. No disrespect to them, but that competition really comes to life now in knockout ties, and that quarter-final draw, whatever way it may fall, will be fairly interesting next week, and whenever those ties get to play. And I suppose just thinking about Kildare as well, it probably means an awful lot of Kildare players out in action probably next Tuesday ahead of what will be a huge game against Offaly then the following Saturday evening.
Yeah, it is. You're doubling up, and Sigerson gets serious. I mean, Dundalk gave them their fill of it last night. I think in that second half, there were about 10 or 15 minutes there where just Dundalk had chance after chance. They were through on goal near the end as well. It was a last-ditch block. Probably should have had a penalty, I think, at one stage as well. And Maynooth were under a little bit of pressure. I'm trying to think what Dundalk got back to. I think they got it back to 3, maybe. And we know on this modern game, because I don't think either team, I think only one Maynooth player had kicked the 2-pointer up till then, so they weren't raining them in from everywhere. But like Maynooth, they need to buck up a small bit now before this next round. Obviously, we'll see the draw before the end of the week. But even a few of those Kildare players as well, they might be a little disappointed in their own performances. It's great to get a win, and by all like Dundalk, Dundalk had a brilliant win in the previous round. I think, they've racked up big scores. They're only after coming up from the Trench Cup. They've consolidated their place in the Sigerson this year as well, by beating somebody could have been to Midlands or something. I think it was Midlands that they beat, and that consolidated their position in the Sigerson Cup. So no mugs, but Maynooth just know that the challenges are just going to get more and more difficult. To be honest with you, it was a good draw for Maynooth, considering the teams they could have got, but just there's a lot of work for the management to do there now, just to see, because we know the quality that they have, with the obvious Kildare players that we know, but even getting the best out of Frayne and Kinsella and Duke and these lads, you just want to see them raising it to a different level, because when you see these names on the paper for Maynooth, you're thinking they have to be challengers. They have to be challengers for Sigerson Cup. They've been in a quarter-final and semi-final the last couple of years. I just want to see something else from them, Ger. It's kind of you're just waiting for them to properly click. I'm hoping they do. I think they can. And I'm going to echo what I echo every week, that hopefully there's no injuries whenever Maynooth play the Sigerson Cup, because again, my heart was in my mouth last night as well for a few of those Kildare players. But I really just love to see them going deep. But to go deep, there has to be big improvements for them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the look of the draw will play a lot to do it as well, when we will be keeping a keen ear out for that draw as well. But yeah, just to mention then schools football, I did briefly mention it then. Naas CBS, their brother Bosco Hopes died at the semi-final stage, and Will Scahill, who is an outstanding young talent, and incredibly, I think he's available for Coláiste again next season as well in that schools competition. But he scored 111 as Mullingar beat Naas CBS by 216 to 14 points, and that sets up an all Westmeath final with Marist College as well, winning their way through as well. So it's an all Westmeath brother Bosco Cup as well as winning the O'Byrne Cup. So things looking bright there for Westmeath. We'll leave it there for the GAA now. We're just as an hour and a half. We're after doing a good round up there of everything that's happening in the Kildare GAA world, and just a couple of AOBs, bits of AOB, I suppose, to look. Actually, just very briefly as well, just to mention one last piece of GAA. Commiserations to Christine Murray as well, actually, last weekend, who went for the role of the Leinster PRO at the Leinster Convention. Unfortunately, didn't get that position. Bob Donny of Louth was the man elected in. But yeah, Leinster's loss will be somebody else's game, because Christine, we spoke a lot about her, actually left the Kildare County Board over Christmas, and she will definitely be in some prominent role again very soon indeed. But yeah, commiserations to Christine there. But yeah, we will move on now, and just we're going to speak about rugby. We have our resident rugby expert here, Seamus Dillon, and before we get his thoughts just on the Six Nations, just to mention a big weekend, the kind of local rugby, because the Towns Cup gets underway, and of course that is a competition that was won by a tie last season, and on the back of that, they get a bye through the first round. But there are more than a couple of Kildare sides in action. Most of these taking place at 2:30. Indeed, all the Kildare teams that are in action in the Provincial Towns Cup in the first round of it are out on Sunday afternoon at 2:30. So that sees Naas second team away to Ashbourne. Naas first team were also in AIL action over the weekend in Fornott on Saturday afternoon. Kildare are at home to Balbriggan in Silken Thomas Park. Further down as well, Newbridge are host Clondalkin. North Kildare are at home to Longford, and that is all of the Kildare sides, I think, in the first round as well. So a couple of byes through as well, most notably for a tie. So hopefully that cup maybe will stay in Kildare, but a lot of rugby still to be played. But yeah, the big news, I suppose, in terms of rugby, Seamus, earlier today, the announcement of the Six Nations squad for Ireland. Andy Farrell naming a 37-man squad. Jimmy O'Brien, unfortunately, not in it due to injury, but there were 5 Kildare players. I suppose 4 of them would have been pretty much as expected. The 2 Prendergast brothers, obviously Tyg Byrne, and maybe Jamie Osborne. Great to see him back named in the squad, albeit maybe not fully fit at the moment, but hopefully by the time the Six Nations rolled around that he will be ready to go and recovered from his injury. But the big talking point maybe is the inclusion of 30-year-old Munster front row man, Jeremy Lockman, who was from a tie, has 5 previous caps, but this is first call-up, I think, for the Six Nations, and he could be pitched in now to some massive games now in the Irish front row in the Six Nations.
Yeah, look, we spoke about injuries to Kildare senior football panel, but the Irish rugby panel has been decimated, I suppose, for the want of a better word. And when you look at that front row of Andrew Porter and Paddy McCarthy, 2 most notable absentees, it gives a great opportunity to Jeremy Lockman to come in and add to those 5 caps. And I think that you're going to hopefully see him as part of that 23 in Paris on next Thursday week, and it'll be it's a big game, a big opportunity for him. But he's been playing really well, and he's been rewarded, But the likes of Jimmy O'Brien and Brian Baird, Mac Hansen, Larmer, Calvin Nash, these are all guys, regulars. Robbie Henshaw, probably the most noticeable one, having picked up an injury last week against Bayonne. It certainly curtails what Andy Farrell has to pick, especially going into the first game, and that's probably the biggest game of the season, because and it's a season it's massive in the sense that looking down the road to a World Cup next year in Australia. He'll be looking to maybe add some guys to the panel, add some different talent coming in different positions. I suppose the most noticeable one that everybody's been talking about is in the centres, where you have a couple of 32-year-olds in Hansen and in Henshaw and Bundyaki. So they've been undoubted two of the brilliant players over the last number of years for Ireland, but there'll probably have to be changes coming down the line, and let's see that Farrell has gone with 4 out halves in the panel, with Harry Byrne, Frawley, Jack Crowley, and Sam Prendergast. So it's an interesting pick that he has. Frawley is probably more of a utility back in the sense that he can play anywhere 10, 12 or 15, with Hugo Keenan back in again. That sort of he hasn't played a whole lot of rugby, but you'd be hoping that if he is up to speed, that he will start at full back. His performances last year for the Lions makes him a standout at 15 for Ireland. So there's a lot of permutations and interesting, and look at, as we see in every forum that's on the go, everybody wants to talk about number 10, and it'll be interesting to see who holds on to that. I think it's getting very close to maybe just down to 2 players at this particular stage, but we won't predict that maybe until next week, Ger, shortly before kickoff. But look at it. It's second row guy that we saw last week for Munster against Castres. I'm not sure if any of you saw that particular game. There's a guy, a Dogbo is his name, playing second row. He is like, you see some of the second rows that France would have had over the years. Your man Betts and a few of those guys. This guy is up there at 6'3" or 6'4", 20 odd stone, but massive. He just, the other night he scored 2 tries. He just went through a bunch of players there with, look at, such strength and force, and he's one for the future. It's great to see him in there, getting an opportunity to be part of the panel, and there'll be plenty of that, because I think they go to Portugal maybe this weekend for a bit of a training camp before they come back to Paris. So look at plenty of lads putting their hands up there. Your man Nathan Doak, the Ulster scrum half, has been excellent this year, and he comes in behind probably Jameson Gibson Park as maybe number 2 or possibly number 3 on the Irish setup as well. So it's a strong panel. Look at, there's 8 or 10 lads there who are out injured, but great to see the Kildare lads with Jeremy Loughlin, to say Keane and Sam Prendergast, Jamie Osborne, and Tygburn. I was nearly going to say Alex Byrne there, but Tygburn. But it's an exciting one, but it's a massive one, because the 2 big games, I suppose, this season are away to France and to England. And if Ireland can get anything out of either of those 2 games, it'll be a strong building block with the World Cup in mind in 12 months' time.
I have a question for Seamus.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's not Adam. What do you think about the fixture being on a Thursday night?
Well, I think going back to when they were made, and I have to stand corrected on this, is there something possibly in Paris at the weekend?
Yeah, there is something on
for it. But I think as big as France is, and with the facilities they have and all the big clubs, that certainly going of a Thursday evening at 8 o'clock or whatever it's going to be is probably ludicrous, for the want of a better word. It's you know what I mean, for people traveling, for supporters, everything like that. It certainly puts your plans up in the air. And the French Rugby Union, or the Six Nations, they certainly know how to charge for tickets at, possibly somewhere up in the region of 200 to 250 quid for some of them. So it's a It's a big weekend. It's a big Thursday night. It's an expensive Thursday night. The Irish will travel in numbers as they always do, but I certainly think with the size of France, they could have found somewhere that was certainly more suitable at the weekend.
You're just worried, Tommy, you won't have your weekend pints. You don't want to go out for pints on a school night.
Well, no, hang on now, Joe. We don't want people in this podcast thinking that that's not like the Six Nations is serious crack for people in Ireland. It really is. Like it's your even the I never really like even the Friday night games. Just I know something about it still end of the week, but like a Saturday afternoon. I mean, you go to any pub in Dublin. You go on around the country, every pub like is just great crack. The same with kind of maybe to a lesser extent the Sunday afternoon games. But Six Nations Saturdays. I remember being down or being up in Sligo last year, and who were Ireland? Ireland playing somebody the same day, and it was on. I think Kildare were playing Sligo on the Sunday, and on the Saturday night before Ireland were playing against. I can't remember who it was, but like we went into a pub as soon as we got to Sligo, and the place was hopping. All watching the rugby. It was great crack. But you're not going to get that on a Thursday night, and people to travel over, taking a few days off work, and it's just when I saw it, it just didn't really, and it's such a monstrous game as well. It's massive. We figure out what's on. I saw somewhere, was there a marathon or something? Or there's something big. It's not the Winter Olympics. That's in Italy, isn't it?
Yeah, something anyhow. I'm not sure, but there is definitely something.
Yeah, I read somewhere or something. I just can't remember.
When Tommy is checking that out, Seamus, I'm just going to move it on just to horse racing, because just I want to mention, I know it's not in Kildare, but it is an event that attracts a lot of racegoers from Kildare. That's the Tayesta's Chase in Goran Park tomorrow afternoon. And there was an inspection of the track there as we are recording here late on Wednesday, earlier on this afternoon, that says racing will go ahead. It might be more of a swim race than an actual run race before these horses, because it is absolutely pouring down. And I'm looking at the Kildare interest in the feature race at the Estes Chase yesterday afternoon. And Mark Walsh's ride, Better Times Ahead, for trainer Robert Tyner, was one of the favourites, but he has drifted out now to 8-1, and that maybe suggests that he won't appreciate the bottomless conditions that will be in Kilkenny tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, look at it. Hopefully it goes ahead, because to talk about Melbourne stopping a nation, but Goran Park will certainly stop Kilkenny and surrounding areas. And I spoke about National Hunt fans last week about it's a massive day in Kilkenny, and I've had a chance to experience it once in the past year, but it's some place that so many people want to go to. But it's a massive meeting. It's their main one of the year. It's a couple of big hurdle races, the John Mulhern hurdle, which is in recognition of a great trainer in the past and owner and a big contributor to Irish racing. And it'll be Gordon Elliott and Declan Queally there, who battled it out at the top of the table as regards favouritism, but Staffordshire not being the favourite for Elliott, and his horses have maybe come back a little bit since they racing festival to Dublin, but you can be assured that he'll have certainly those back in the top of their form before the Dublin Racing Festival in early February, which is coming around the corner again pretty quickly. But massive. The Tayesta's Chase is something that every trainer trains horses for. As you said, Robert Tyner's Better Time Ahead, Captain Cody there for Willie Mullins, locally owned horse. There's you could go through a lot of them there and have a look. Tom Gibney, an Irish Grand National winning trainer in the past, and Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott will probably throw 5 or 6 runners each at it. But it'll be a race that somebody had said to me today that maybe now is the hour for Gavin Cromwell, is maybe an outsider with a little bit of a sneaky chance tomorrow afternoon. But it's you'll be hoping it'll go ahead. I think it'll have to be a very, very bad night for that to be called off, because as I say, it's such a big meeting for Goran and for Kilkenny, and hopefully it does get to go ahead in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely, and the very best of luck. And maybe Seamus has maybe pointed you in the direction of a winner, so maybe we're heading into a tipping service here as well in the short class sports podcast, or maybe you'd be better off keeping your money in your pocket. Yeah, we will say that as well.
I found out why the game's on Thursday night, Joe. Okay, I mentioned the Winter Olympics because I knew I read something about the Winter Olympics. So the game is moved Thursday night. because they don't want it clashing with the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics on Friday night, which is in
Italy.
Milan.
Jeez.
So yeah, or if they like what the hell, lads, in fairness, like France, like I know France like to throw in like they love their evening games, they love their night games. What? Tell me they couldn't have moved that game to a Saturday or a Sunday, or manoeuvred some way. Or I don't know what's going on there, but cancel it for who? I don't know who let that happen, or maybe there are deeper reasons. But they feel like they're going to generate a larger TV audience for the rugby by having it the night before. That's the reason that it was on the Times had it through Rugby World quote or something. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Certainly.
No, definitely not. But just to wrap things up, just to mention a couple of things very quickly, just on the soccer front. Best of luck to Clonmullion, who travel on Sunday to play in the last 16 of the LFA Junior Cup. They play Enniscorthy. It seems a long time ago now that they beat Evergreen of Kilkenny in the last round, late in November, I think it was, or early December. But yeah, they're in the next round of that against Enniscorthy. So no doubt they've been training away under the watchful eye of Timmy Doyle and Barry Hughes. Also, I think Britangan are still in that competition, but I don't see them having a fixture this weekend. So maybe that's perhaps next weekend. And just on the soccer front as well, to mention a Kildare man who's doing incredibly well across the water in England, Cathal McCarthy of Hull City. He featured as a substitute last Saturday as Hull won away against Southampton, and then again during the week then as well, when they had a fantastic win against Preston. So Hull are up now to 4th in the league, and I know Cathal was home in between those two games as well, back home here with his family in Kildare as well. So he's featured in both of those games, and Hull are pushing hard for maybe even an automatic promotion place, but certainly in the playoffs. And Cathal McCarthy is really making his mark there. So yeah, very well done to him on those fantastic last week that he's had, and the best of luck for the remainder of the season. I'm sure he listens in every week to the short grass. So yeah, best of luck, Cathal. But yeah, so that's about it, lads. God, we've gone on for an hour and 3/4. We're going to be in for some lengthy podcasts throughout the league season by the looks of it, but obviously a lot to speak about in terms of the Kildare teams getting the ball rolling for their league season. So I think that's about it, lads. I'm about ready for a cup of tea, maybe, unless you have anything else to add, Tommy or Seamus, before we finish up.
Because I know people might be listening, waiting for their comments. So we had a few other comments on that form that I sent out. Now, we're obviously stuck for time. We were stuck for time, so I couldn't read them all out. But the ones that we didn't read out are still relevant and will be still relevant next week and the week after. So if you haven't heard your comment read out, don't worry. They're in the bank here. We'll be addressing them next week. There's a couple about the hurlers as well. Is this a golden generation, or is it sustainable, and different things? There's a couple of really good questions in there. Questions about the Kildare goalkeeper, which I think we answered in our picks and stuff. But yeah, so keep the comments coming in. I'm going to keep the same form open for the rest of the season, and we can let the questions build up. So thanks, everybody. So
great to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for anybody who took the time to send in a comment or has shared or liked or even just listened and joined in to anything that we are talking about. Yeah, it's always great to have the involvement of our listeners and viewers. So yeah, thanks indeed to anybody who took the trouble to do that. And as Tommy said, that will be something that we'll be featuring more and more of as the weeks go on through the league season for the various Kildare sides. But yeah, that's about it for a very lengthy short grass Kildare Nationalist Sports podcast. Best of luck to the Kildare teams and all Kildare sports people across the weekend. We'll be keeping a close eye on all that's happening. We'll talk to you again next week.